The slap echoed louder than the gunshot that came later. For one breathless second, the entire diner stopped breathing. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Coffee trembled inside stained white mugs. The neon sign outside flickered, red against the rain-soaked windows, painting everyone's faces with the color of warning. Olivia Bennett stood behind the counter with her chest rising and falling, her palm still burning from the impact. Her apron was smeared with coffee, grease, and the long humiliation of another double shift. One curl had escaped her messy bun and clung to her cheek. Her feet ached. Her back hurt. Her patience had died 3 customers ago. And now she had just slapped Matteo DeLuca. She did not know his name yet, but everyone else did. The old man in booth 7 made the sign of the cross. The cook in the kitchen lowered his spatula like he had just seen an execution begin. A woman near the window whispered, "Oh my God," and then covered her own mouth as if the words might get her killed. Matteo DeLuca did not move. He stood in the center of Rosie's diner wearing a black wool coat that looked too expensive for the cracked tiles beneath his shoes. Rain glistened on his shoulders. His dark hair was slick from the storm. His face was calm, almost beautiful in a dangerous, carved from stone way. Olivia's handprint slowly appeared across his cheek. He touched it with 2 fingers. Not in anger, in curiosity. The men behind him reached inside their jackets. Matteo lifted one hand. They stopped. The silence became unbearable. Olivia swallowed hard, realizing too late that the entire room had changed. Before, she had been angry. Now, she felt the invisible blade of fear press against her throat. He looked at her. Really looked at her. His eyes moved over her face, not her body, not her uniform, not the coffee stain across her chest, but her face. Her flushed cheeks. Her furious eyes. The trembling in her lips that she was trying desperately to hide. "You should be more careful," he said softly. His voice was low, controlled, almost intimate. Olivia's heart pounded. "So should you?" A murmur moved through the diner like wind through dead leaves. Matteo's eyes narrowed. But not with rage, with fascination. 5 minutes earlier, he had walked in from the storm with 4 men in dark suits, and a silence that followed him like a shadow. Olivia had been pouring coffee for a group of drunk businessmen who had spent the last hour laughing at her hips, her arms, her body, her face, and the way her uniform fit. "Sweetheart," one of them had said, grinning at his friends. "You sure you work here? Or did you eat the waitress?" The table had exploded with laughter. Olivia had smiled because rent was due. She had smiled because her mother's medication was waiting at the pharmacy. She had smiled because sometimes survival meant swallowing glass and calling it manners. Then the stranger had entered. The diner had gone quiet before she understood why. He took the booth in the back, the one beneath the broken clock. His men spread around him without speaking. They did not look like customers. They looked like locks on a vault. Olivia approached with a coffee pot in one hand and exhaustion in her bones. "Coffee?" she asked. Matteo had looked at her for half a second. Then down at the menu, "Black." She poured. One of the drunk businessmen called from across the room. "Careful, big girl. Don't bend the table." Laughter again. Olivia's hand tightened around the coffee pot. Matteo glanced toward the men. His expression did not change, but something in the air sharpened. Olivia muttered, "Enjoy your coffee," and turned away. That was when Matteo, still reading the menu, said quietly, "People learn how to treat you by what you allow." He had meant the men. Olivia heard something else. She heard every customer who had treated her like a joke, every man who had looked through her or at too much of her, every woman who had smiled with pity, every employer who told her she had a pretty face as if the rest of her were an apology. She turned back. "What did you just say?" Matteo looked up. "You heard me." And Olivia slapped him. Now, standing in the dead silence, she realized the drunk businessman had stopped laughing. One had gone pale. Another was sliding money onto the table with shaking fingers. Matteo's men still had their hands near their guns. Olivia forced herself not to step back. The stranger studied her for another long moment. Then, without looking away, he said, "Pay every bill in here." One of his men blinked. "Boss." "Every bill," Matteo repeated, "and leave $1,000 for the waitress." Olivia's breath caught. "I don't want your money." For the first time, the corner of Matteo DeLuca's mouth almost moved. "No," he said. I imagine you done. He turned and walked out into the rain. The bell above the door rang softly behind him. No one spoke until the black SUVs outside pulled away from the curb. Then the cook rushed out of the kitchen, face gray. Olivia, he whispered, do you know who that was? She looked at the rain streaking down the glass. No, that was Matteo DeLuca. The name meant nothing for half a second. Then it meant everything. She had heard it in whispers. On news reports, in warnings. The DeLuca family owned half the city and haunted the other half. Politicians smiled when they took his money. Judges lost files. Men who betrayed him vanished into Lake Michigan. Matteo DeLuca did not forgive insults. He buried them. Olivia looked down at her red palm. And for the first time that night, she felt afraid. The roses arrived at 7 the next morning. Not a quet. A storm. White roses filled the diner doorway, carried by a deliveryman who refused to step inside after reading the name on the card. There were at least 500 of them, wrapped in black silk ribbon, their petals trembling from the cold. Olivia stared at them while Rosie, the owner, stood beside her with a cigarette unlit between her fingers. What does the card say? Rosie asked. Olivia opened it. The handwriting was sharp, elegant, and black. For your hand, it must hurt. MD. Rosie backed away. Oh, honey. Olivia wanted to throw them in the trash instead. She stood there with the card in her fingers and felt a strange heat climb her throat. By noon, the entire neighborhood knew. By evening, the drunk businessman from the night before came back to apologize. Not with arrogance, with fear. One of them cried. Another brought an envelope full of cash and begged her to accept it. Olivia refused. The next morning, a black town car waited outside her apartment. She stopped on the sidewalk with her purse clutched to her chest. The driver stepped out, tall and silent. Miss Bennett, he said. Mr. DeLuca asked me to take you to work. No. He said you would say that. Then he's smarter than he looks. The driver's mouth twitched. He also said to tell you the red sedan across the street has been watching your building for 40 minutes. Olivia turned. A red sedan sat at the curb with its engine running. Her stomach tightened. Who are they? Not ours, ours. The word chilled her. She took the bus. The Blacktown car followed the bus the entire way. At work, 2 men in dark coats stood outside the diner. They did not enter, they did not speak. But every time someone looked too long at Olivia, one of them looked back. Customers became polite. Too polite. Men who had mocked her now lowered their eyes. Women who once ignored her smiled nervously. Even Rosie stopped asking Olivia to handle the worst tables. Olivia hated it. She hated that fear had bought her respect faster than kindness ever had. On the 3rd night, she found a velvet box waiting in her locker. Inside was a bracelet of diamonds and tiny black stones that caught the light like secrets. The card said, "You refuse cash. Try beauty." She marched out of the diner, bracelet in hand, and found him waiting beneath the alley light. Matteo DeLuca leaned against a black SUV, smoking without hurry. Rain misted around him. His bodyguard stood several feet away. Close enough to kill, far enough to pretend not to listen. Olivia threw the box at his chest. He caught it easily. "I'm not for sale," she snapped. His eyes dropped to the bracelet, then returned to her. "I never said you were." "Then stop sending me things." "No." The simplicity of it stunned her. "No." She stepped closer, anger overcoming fear. "You can just invade someone's life because they hurt your pride." "My pride was not hurt." "Then what is this?" Matteo took one slow step toward her. The alley seemed to shrink. "This," he said, "is interest." Olivia laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "You were interested because I slapped you. I'm interested because you were terrified after you did it and still refused to apologize." She opened her mouth, then closed it. His gaze moved to her lips for the briefest second. "I know fear," he said. "I know obedience. I know performance. I know people who smile while they hate me and kneel while they curse me." His voice lowered. "You did none of those things. That doesn't make me special." "No," he said. "It makes you rare." Something passed between them then. Not romance, not trust, recognition. Olivia looked away first. "I don't want your gifts, keep the roses. They re dead. So are most beautiful things." She hated the way that sentence stayed with her. A car turned into the alley. Matteo's expression changed before Olivia heard the tires. 1 second he was calm, the next. His hand wrapped around her wrist and pulled her behind him. The red sedan from her street rolled slowly into view. Its window lowered. Matteo pushed Olivia against the SUV and covered her with his body as the first gunshot shattered the alley light. The world exploded. Glass rained down. Olivia screamed. Matteo's men fired back, their guns flashing white in the dark. The sedan sped forward, bullets tearing into brick metal and rain. Matteo did not duck away from her. He stayed between Olivia and death, like he had decided his body was a wall. "Don't move," he said against her ear. His voice was terrifyingly calm. She could feel his heartbeat, steady, controlled, not like hers, which felt like it was trying to break out of her ribs. The shooting lasted less than 15 seconds. Then the sedan crashed into a dumpster, smoke rising from its hood. One of Matteo's men dragged the driver out and threw him onto the wet pavement. Matteo turned. His cheek was cut. Blood slid down his jaw. Olivia stared at him. "You're bleeding." He looked almost annoyed by the fact. "It's not deep. You were shot at, yes. Because of me." His silence was the answer. The driver on the ground spat blood and laughed. "The girl doesn't even know," he wheezed. Matteo went still. Olivia looked at him. "Know what?" The man laughed harder. Matteo walked toward him. "Matteo," one of his men warned. The driver smiled through broken teeth. "Sokolov sends his regards." Matteo crouched. His voice dropped too low for Olivia to hear. The driver stopped smiling. A moment later, Matteo stood. "Take him alive," he ordered. Then he turned back to Olivia. "We need to leave." "No." She stepped away from the SUV. "You need to tell me why someone just tried to kill me." "They weren't trying to kill you." Her blood went cold. "Then what?" Matteo's eyes held hers. "They were trying to take you." The safe house was not a house. It was a fortress dressed as a mansion on the edge of Lake Michigan, hidden behind iron gates, black trees, and enough armed men to start a small war. Rain battered the windows. The lake beyond moved like dark glass. Olivia sat in a candlelit library with a blanket around her shoulders and an untouched glass of brandy on the table. Matteo stood near the fireplace, speaking in Italian to 3 men. His voice remained calm, but the room bent around him. Men listened to him like mistakes had consequences. Olivia watched him and hated the part of herself that felt safer when he was near. When the men left, silence settled. She stood. "I'm going home." "No." "You don't get to say no. When a Russian hit squad tries to abduct you." "I do. I have a life. You have a target on your back. Because of you." He turned toward her. His face revealed nothing, but his eyes did. A flicker, guilt. Then it was gone. "Because of something you have," he said. Olivia frowned. "I don't have anything." "You wear a gold locket." Her hand flew to her neck. The locket was small, old, and dented. Her mother had given it to her when Olivia was 16, saying only that it had belonged to Olivia's father before he disappeared. "What does my locket have to do with Russian criminals?" Matteo stepped closer. "May I see it?" "No." He stopped immediately. That surprised her. Most men like him took what they wanted. Matteo only held out his hand and waited. Olivia hesitated, then unclasped it and placed it in his palm. His fingers closed around the locket with strange care. He pressed the side. Nothing happened. Then he twisted the back plate slightly, in a way Olivia had never known to try. The locket opened deeper than it should have. Inside was a tiny memory chip. Olivia stared. "What is that?" Matteo's expression darkened. "The reason men are dying." He told her only part of the truth that night. Her father, Daniel Bennett, had not been a failed businessman as her mother always claimed. He had been an accountant for several crime families in Chicago, including the DeLucas. Years ago, he had stolen evidence ledgers, names, offshore accounts, murder payments, and vanished before he could sell it. Matteo's sister, Sophia, had died searching for him. A car bomb 6 years ago. Matteo had inherited an empire that night, and a grief so violent it froze whatever was left of his heart. Olivia listened without moving. "My father was involved with people like you." "Yes. And you think he gave this to my mother?" "I think he hid it where no one would look." Matteo's gaze lowered to the locket. "On his daughter." The words hit her like a slap. Her whole childhood shifted. Her mother's fear, the sudden moves, the locked doors, the way she refused to answer questions about Olivia's father. "Did you know?" Olivia whispered. "Not until tonight." "Don't lie to me." "I lie often," Matteo said, "but not about this." She hated that she believed him. The next morning, Olivia tried to leave. She made it as far as the front stairs before 4 guards appeared without seeming to move. Matteo came down behind them in a black shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. "You can't keep me prisoner," she said. "I can keep you alive. That's not the same thing." "No," he said. "It is more important." Her anger flared. "To you?" His eyes locked on hers. "Yes." The word landed between them too heavily. Olivia looked away. For 3 days, she lived inside Matteo De Luca's mansion like a guest who was not allowed to touch the doors. He gave her space, too much space, her own room with lake views, silk sheets, and a lock on the inside. Clothes appeared in her size, not guessed badly, not insulting, but carefully chosen. Warm sweaters, soft dresses, comfortable shoes, nothing revealing, nothing cheap. Everything expensive enough to feel like a threat. She refused most of it. Then her diner uniform came back from the laundry folded in tissue paper. She stared at it for a long time. Matteo noticed everything. That was the most unsettling part. He noticed she drank coffee with cream but no sugar. He noticed she hated being watched while eating. He noticed she flinched when men raised their voices. He noticed she touched her locket when she was scared, even after the chip had been removed. He noticed, and he adjusted the world around her without asking permission. The guards stopped staring. The cook stopped entering the kitchen when she was there. The television in the library was set to old black and white movies by the 2nd evening. On the 4th night, Olivia found Matteo alone in the underground garage, standing beside a vintage black car with blood on his knuckles. She should have turned around. Instead, she said, "You re-hurt again." He looked over his shoulder. "It happens. Do you ever answer like a normal person?" "No." She took a breath, then approached with the first aid kit she had found in the kitchen. He watched her as if she were walking toward him with a weapon. "Sit," she said. His eyebrow lifted. Was that an order? Yes. For a moment, neither moved. Then Matteo De Luca sat. Olivia cleaned his knuckles under the harsh white garage lights. His hands were large, scarred, and steady. Hands that had signed death warrants. Hands that had pulled her behind him in an alley. Hands that now remained perfectly still beneath her touch. "What happened?" she asked. "A man lied to me. And that required bleeding, his blood, mostly." Olivia froze. Matteo looked at her. "I want to make myself pretty for you." "I didn't ask you to." "No," he said quietly. "But you want to believe there is a gentle explanation for everything." She wrapped gauze around his hand with more force than necessary. "I want to believe I am not sitting in a garage with a murderer." His face did not change. "You are." The honesty should have repelled her. Instead, it settled over the space like a dark curtain. She tied the gauze. "Then why don't I feel as afraid of you as I should?" Matteo's breathing changed. Just slightly. His gaze dropped to her hand, still resting over his. He could have touched her then. She knew it. He knew it for one suspended second. The garage, the guards, the danger, the blood, the entire city disappeared. Then Matteo pulled his hand away. "Because you're not stupid," he said. "You know the difference between a monster and a monster standing in front of you." Olivia laughed softly despite herself. "That's supposed to make me feel better." "No." He stood. "It's supposed to make you careful." But careful became harder. The next week turned into a strange, dangerous rhythm. Matteo searched the memory chip. Olivia searched the ruins of her own life. Men followed her when she visited her mother at the nursing facility. Black subs waited outside. Nurses whispered. Her mother, Evelyn, looked smaller than Olivia remembered, her illness thinning her voice but not her eyes. When Olivia showed her the empty locket, Evelyn began to cry. "You weren't supposed to find out," she whispered. "Find out what?" Evelyn looked toward the window, where Matteo stood outside in the hallway, speaking to a guard. "Your father tried to save us." "From who?" "From all of them." Olivia sat beside her mother's bed. Evelyn gripped her hand with surprising strength. "Daniel worked for monsters. Then he found something worse. A secret agreement between the De Lucas and the Sokolovs. Judges, police, children used as leverage. People disappearing." Her voice broke. "He wanted out. He wanted to give the evidence to someone who could protect us." "Why didn't he?" "Because someone betrayed him." Olivia skin chilled. "Who?" Evelyn looked toward Matteo again. "His own family." That night, Olivia confronted Matteo in the penthouse office above one of his private clubs. Chicago glittered below them through floor-to-ceiling windows. Rain moved down the glass like tears. Music pulsed faintly from the club beneath, where beautiful people danced under red lights without knowing men with guns stood behind hidden doors. You said your sister died looking for my father, Olivia said. Matteo looked up from his desk. She did. My mother says someone in your family betrayed him. His face went still. Your mother is ill. She's not confused. No, Matteo said. She's afraid. Olivia stepped closer. Did your family kill my father? Matteo rose slowly. My father gave the order. The room tilted. Olivia felt the air leave her lungs. You knew. I suspected. You brought me into your house. You touched my life. You sent me flowers. You watched me. And you suspected your family murdered my father. Matteo's jaw tightened. My father is dead. That doesn't he answer me? No, he said. It doesn't he? Her eyes burned. I trusted you. His expression hardened, but his voice changed, lower, rougher. You should not have. The cruelty of it struck deeper because it sounded like pain. Olivia backed away. You rewrite. She turned to leave. Matteo moved around the desk. Olivia. No, her voice shook. Do not say my name like it belongs to you. He stopped. The silence between them cracked. Then the office door opened. A man entered without knocking. Older, elegant, silver-haired, wearing a grey suit and a smile that did not reach his eyes. Matteo's expression turned lethal. Uncle Carlo. Carlo De Luca looked at Olivia with open interest. So this is the waitress. Matteo moved subtly, placing himself between them. Carlo noticed. His smile widened. How touching. Olivia looked from one man to the other. The room filled with invisible knives. Carlo placed a folder on the desk. Victor Sokolov wants a meeting. No, Matteo said, he has something you want. I have what I want. Carlo's gaze slid to Olivia. Not for long. The first betrayal came at midnight. The fire alarm screamed through the penthouse. Smoke filled the corridor. Matteo's guards shouted. Olivia woke to red light flashing across her bedroom walls and the smell of gasoline. She opened the door. A hand covered her mouth. She kicked bit and slammed her elbow back, but the man dragged her into the hallway. Another man waited near the elevator. Not Matteo's guards, different suits, different eyes. She heard gunfire from below. Then Matteo's voice. Olivia. The man holding her tightened his grip. The elevator doors opened. Before he could force her inside, the hallway window exploded inward. Matteo came through the smoke like something born from violence. He shot the first man without hesitation. The second grabbed Olivia by the throat and pressed a gun to her head. Matteo stopped. The world narrowed to 3 breaths. Olivia felt cold metal against her temple. The man laughed. Drop it. Matteo's gun lowered. His eyes never left Olivia's. Not the gun, not the man, her. Close your eyes, he said softly. The man snarled. I said drop. Matteo threw a knife. It struck the man's wrist. The gun fired into the ceiling. Olivia dropped. Matteo crossed the hallway and caught her before she hit the floor. For one terrifying second, she clung to him, his arms locked around her, his face pressed into her hair. You're safe, he said. But his voice betrayed him. It was shaking. Just once, just enough. Olivia pulled back and saw something in his eyes she had not seen before. Fear, not for himself. For her. Then the sprinklers burst overhead, soaking them both in artificial rain, while smoke curled around their bodies and blood spread across the marble floor. Carlo had vanished. By dawn, Matteo knew. His uncle had opened the security codes. Carlo had fed information to Victor Sokolov. Carlo had helped kill Olivia's father. And years earlier, Carlo had sent Matteo's sister to the wrong location, where the car bomb waited. The betrayal was not only business, it was blood. Olivia stood in Matteo's war room as screens showed surveillance footage, maps, names, and bank transfers from the memory chip. Men argued around the table, but Matteo said nothing. He watched the video of his sister's final moments without blinking. Olivia watched him instead. There was no dramatic breakdown, no shouting, no visible grief. Only his hand tightening around the edge of the table, until his knuckles went white. Something inside her softened despite herself. She still hated him for what he was, for what his family had done, for the way he had entered her life like a storm, and called it protection. But she understood grief that had nowhere to go. Later, she found him in the chapel attached to the mansion. A small candlelit room with dark wood pews and stained glass windows showing saints with sorrowful eyes. Matteo sat alone in the front row, no guards, no weapon visible. Just a man in a black suit staring at an altar like he had forgotten how to pray. Olivia stood at the back. "You should leave," he said. "I know. I mean Chicago." She walked slowly down the aisle. "Is that an order?" "It is the first selfless thing I have said to you." She sat beside him, leaving space between them. Candlelight moved across his face. "Carlo want to stop," Matteo said. "Sokolov want to stop. If the evidence goes public, half the city burns. If it disappears, you become the only loose end." Olivia stared at the candles. "And what do you want?" He laughed once, without humor. "I want to lock every door in this city until nothing can reach you." "That sounds like a cage." "It is. At least you admit it." His head turned, their eyes met. "I want you alive more than I want you to like me." Her throat tightened. "That's not love." "No," he said, "it's worse." The confession hung there in the chapel, dark and fragile. Olivia whispered, "What am I to you, Matteo?" He looked away. For a long time, he did not answer. Then he said, "The first thing I did not know how to own." She should have stood. She should have walked away. Instead, she reached across the space between them and touched the bandage on his hand. His whole body went still. "You don't get to own me," she said. His eyes dropped to her fingers. "I know. And you don't get to save me by controlling me. I am trying to learn the difference." That was the closest Matteo DeLuca came to begging. Olivia did not forgive him that night, but she stayed beside him until the candles burned low. The fake relationship began as a strategy. Carlo had gone underground. Sokolov had begun spreading rumors that Matteo was weak, distracted, compromised by a waitress who had humiliated him in public. In the mafia world, rumors were not gossip. They were invitations to attack. So Matteo did what powerful men did. He turned weakness into theater. He announced Olivia Bennett as his fiancée. She found out from the news. Her face appeared beside his on every Chicago gossip page by sunrise. Waitress who slapped Mafia King now wearing his ring. Except there was no ring, not yet. Olivia stormed into his office holding her phone. "Have you lost your mind? Many years ago, you told the entire city we re-engaged. I said there will be an announcement. That's worse. It keeps you protected. It paints a bigger target on me. It makes touching you an act of war." Olivia stared at him. Matteo opened a drawer and removed a black velvet box. "No, you haven't seen it. I don't care if it belonged to a queen." It did not. He opened it. Inside was an antique diamond ring with a dark emerald center, deep green like storm water. Olivia's breath caught despite herself. Matteo noticed. "Of course he did. It belonged to my mother," he said. "That's supposed to make this less insane, no?" His voice softened almost imperceptibly. "More honest." She looked up. He did not kneel. He was not pretending romance. That made it worse somehow. "This is temporary." Olivia said, "Yes, you don't touch me without permission. Never you don't make decisions for me." A pause. "Matteo, I will try." "That is not comforting. It is honest." She took the ring because refusing would not protect her mother, and because the city had already decided she belonged to him. But when Matteo slid it onto her finger, his hand trembled, just slightly. Olivia felt it, so did he. Their eyes met. Neither spoke that night. She attended her first DeLuca gathering at a candlelit mansion outside the city, where chandeliers burned above marble floors and men with old money shook hands with men who had buried bodies for it. Olivia wore a black dress that hugged her curves instead of hiding them. She had expected to feel exposed. Instead, under Matteo's silent gaze, she felt dangerous. He saw her at the top of the stairs and stopped speaking mid-sentence. For a moment, the room disappeared from his face. Then his mask returned. But Olivia had seen it. Carlo's wife approached with a smile full of poison. "My dear," she said, kissing the air near Olivia's cheek. "How brave of you to wear something so fitted." Olivia smiled. "How brave of you to say that out loud." Matteo's eyes flicked to her. Something like pride moved across his face before he hid it. Across the ballroom, a young blonde woman watched them with cold blue eyes. "Who is that?" Olivia asked. Matteo followed her gaze. "Isabella Romano. Should I know her? Our families discussed marriage once." Olivia laughed softly. "Of course they did. It ended years ago." "Does she know that?" Isabella approached before he could answer. She was beautiful in a polished, cruel way. Her diamonds looked like ice. "Matteo," she said, touching his arm. Olivia saw his jaw tighten. Isabella looked at Olivia's ring. So the rumors are true, for once, Matteo said. Isabella smiled at Olivia. Careful. Men like Matteo do not fall in love, they collect vulnerabilities. Olivia felt the hit land. Before she could answer, Matteo took Olivia's hand, not roughly, not for show, but with a quiet possessiveness that made Isabella's smile fade. Olivia is not a vulnerability, he said. She is the reason anyone in this room is still breathing politely. The ballroom heard him. So did Olivia. Later, on the balcony overlooking snow-dusted gardens, she confronted him. Do you enjoy making people afraid? No, liar. He stood beside her in the cold, close enough that his coat brushed her bare arm. I enjoy when fear prevents bloodshed. That sounds lonely. He looked at her. It is. The honesty disarmed her. Snow drifted between them. Inside, music played softly. Outside, Chicago's winter pressed against the glass. Matteo removed his coat and placed it around her shoulders. She should have refused. She did not. His hands lingered near her collar, not touching skin, only fabric. His face was close enough for her to see the faint scar near his mouth, the exhaustion beneath his eyes, the brutal restraint in the way he held himself back. Why me? She whispered, his gaze lowered. You still done Tino? No, because when you slapped me, you were the first person in years who treated me like a man instead of a throne. Her breath caught. He lifted one hand, stopped before touching her face. The almost touch burned worse than contact. Then the balcony doors opened behind them. A gunshot cracked through the glass. Matteo moved instantly. He pulled Olivia down and shielded her as the balcony shattered around them. Guests screamed inside. Men drew weapons, blood sprayed across white snow. Matteo's body jerked. Olivia saw red bloom across his shoulder. Matteo, his face remained calm, but pain flashed in his eyes. Inside he ordered, No, Olivia, no. She grabbed his gun from where it had fallen and pointed it toward the broken doors with both hands shaking. Matteo stared at her. Even bleeding, even surrounded by chaos, he looked at her like she had just rewritten the world. The shooter was killed before he reached the balcony, but the message had been delivered. Sokolov could reach them anywhere, and Carlo was not hiding. He was planning a coronation. The second reveal came from the memory chip. A hidden file, buried beneath layers of encryption, contained a birth certificate. Olivia Bennett. Father, Daniel Bennett. Mother, Evelyn Bennett. Second dependent, unknown minor male. Olivia stared at the screen. What does that mean? Matteo's tech specialist looked uncomfortable. It means your father had another child listed in protected accounts. Olivia's heart stopped. A child. Matteo stood behind her, silent. The specialist clicked another file. A photograph appeared. A small boy, maybe 5 years old, standing beside Daniel Bennett in a park. Dark curls, round cheeks, Olivia's eyes, her hand covered her mouth. No. The file name read, Samuel. Her mother had never told her. Her father had not only hidden evidence, he had hidden a child. Olivia drove to the nursing facility in furious silence with Matteo beside her and 4 subs behind them. Evelyn began crying before Olivia spoke. Who is Samuel? Her mother turned her face away. Mom, he was your brother. Was. The word broke something. What happened? Evelyn shook her head. They took him. Who I done to know? Daniel said Samuel was safer if no one knew. Then one night he was gone, and Daniel came home covered in blood. He said we had to run. He said if anyone knew Samuel was alive, they would use him against us. Olivia could barely breathe. Alive, Evelyn looked at her daughter with unbearable grief. I done to know. Matteo stepped closer. Miss Bennett, did Daniel ever mention the name Romano? Evelyn's face drained. Olivia turned to him. Romano. As in Isabella, Matteo's expression was dark. The Romano family runs private adoptions, illegal ones. The room spun. A brother, a stolen child, a mafia family trading children like debts. Olivia slapped Matteo again. Not as hard as the first time, but enough. Your world did this. He accepted it without flinching. Yes. Fix it. His eyes lifted to hers, and in them she saw the promise before he said it. I will burn anyone who touched him. The search for Samuel changed everything. Olivia no longer wanted to run from Matteo's world. She wanted to tear open its walls. For the first time, she entered the darkness willingly. They moved to a hidden safe house above a closed theater in downtown Chicago. Its stage still held red velvet curtains and dust, covered props from forgotten plays. Matteo turned the dressing rooms into command posts. Olivia slept in the old staff's room beneath a mirror framed by dead bulbs. Every night, men brought information. Every night, Matteo crossed lines Olivia pretended not to see. And every night, he came back to her more exhausted, more silent, more dangerous. Their almost love became a language of restraint. He would stand in her doorway and ask, "Did you eat?" She would ask, "Did you sleep?" Neither answered honestly. He would place coffee beside her before sunrise. She would rewrap his wounds without asking where they came from. Once, after a raid on a Romano warehouse, he returned with blood on his white shirt and a child's blue scarf in his hand. Olivia took it from him with trembling fingers. "Samuel, we don't know yet." But his face told her he feared the answer. She broke then, not loudly, not dramatically. She sank onto the edge of the bed and pressed the scarf to her chest. Matteo knelt in front of her. The sight of him like that Chicago's most feared man on his knees made her cry harder. "I spent my whole life thinking I was alone," she whispered. He did not touch her, not until she reached for him. Then he held her, carefully at first, then with a kind of desperate restraint, as if the force of what he felt might frighten her if he let it show. Olivia buried her face against his shoulder. He smelled like rain, smoke, and expensive soap. "I hate this," she whispered. "I know. I hate needing you." His hand stilled against her back. Then he said, very quietly, "I hate that you can survive without me." She pulled back. His face was inches from hers. There it was. The truth beneath all his control, not romance polished into pretty words. Need, dark, dangerous, human need. Matteo, the old theater lights suddenly flickered on. Every bulb around the mirror lit at once. Then a voice came over the speaker system. "Carlo, how touching." Matteo rose so fast Olivia barely saw him move. The stage curtains below opened by themselves. On the large screen at the back of the theater, a live video appeared. A young man tied to a chair. Beaten, but alive, Olivia's hand flew to her mouth. He had her eyes. Carlo's voice filled the theater. "Hello, Olivia. Meet your brother." Matteo's face became deathly still. Olivia whispered, "Samuel." The young man lifted his head slightly. Through blood and swelling, he looked into the camera. "Don't come," he rasped. The screen went black. Then an address appeared. An abandoned church on the south side. "Midnight, come alone, or he dies." Olivia turned to Matteo. "No," he said before she spoke. "That's my brother. It's a trap." "Of course it is." "You are not going." She stepped toward him. "You don't get to choose." "I do when the choice gets you killed." "I lived my whole life having choices stolen from me by men with secrets." Her voice shook, but her eyes did not. "My father, my mother." "Carlo, you." She pointed at the dark screen. "Not this time." Matteo looked at her as if she were pulling his heart out with her bare hands. "If you walk into that church," he said, "they will use you to break me." "Then don't break." For a moment he looked almost angry, then devastated. "You think I fear death?" he asked softly. "I fear watching yours and continuing to breathe after." The words silenced her. He looked away first. When he spoke again, his voice had turned cold. "We go together." The abandoned church stood beneath a storm, black sky. Its bell tower cracked, its stained glass windows shattered. Snow fell through holes in the roof, melting on broken pews. Candles lined the aisle like a funeral procession. Olivia entered in a dark coat with Matteo beside her. No visible guards, no visible weapons, but outside, hidden in the storm, the DeLuca family waited. At the altar, Samuel knelt with his hands bound. He was 22 now. Thin, bruised, alive. Olivia's knees nearly gave out. "Samuel," she whispered. His eyes filled when he saw her. "I'm sorry," he said, before she could understand. Men emerged from the shadows. Sokolov stepped into the candlelight first, tall, pale, smiling like winter. Carlo followed, then Isabella Romano. Olivia's stomach turned. Matteo's voice was calm. "You always needed an audience." Carlo smiled. "And you always needed something to worship. First your sister, now the waitress." Sokolov looked Olivia up and down. So much blood for one woman. Matteo moved half a step in front of her. "Careful," Sokolov laughed. Carlo lifted a gun and aimed it at Samuel. "Here is the arrangement, the evidence. The girl and your public surrender of the DeLuca Empire. In exchange, the boy lives." Olivia looked at Samuel. He was shaking his head. Then she saw it. The guilt in his eyes, the apology. The way his bound hands were not truly bound. Matteo saw it too. But too late. Samuel stood suddenly and pulled a gun from beneath his jacket. He aimed it at Matteo. Olivia stopped breathing. "I'm sorry," Samuel said again, tears running down his bruised face. "They told me she was dead. They told me you killed our father. They told me if I didn't help, they'd de-kill Olivia." Matteo did not reach for his weapon. Olivia stepped between them. "Samuel, look at me." His gun shook. "You don't know me." "No," Olivia said, tears spilling now. "But I have spent 24 hours loving you like I lost you twice." His face broke. Carlo shouted, "Shoot him." Samuel flinched. Sokolov raised his gun toward Olivia. Matteo moved. The church erupted. Gunfire shattered the candles. DeLuca men burst through side doors. Sokolov soldiers fired from the choir loft. Snow and glass rained down. Olivia dove behind a pew as bullets tore through wood. Matteo reached Samuel first. Not to kill him, to shove him behind cover. A bullet struck Matteo in the side. He staggered, then fired back with terrifying precision. Olivia screamed his name. Carlo grabbed her from behind, his arm locked around her throat, dragging her toward the altar. Matteo turned. Blood soaked his shirt. Carlo pressed a gun beneath Olivia's chin. "On your knees, Matteo." The shooting slowed. Sokolov smiled from the shadows. Matteo looked at Olivia. She shook her head. "Do not." He lowered his gun. Then, slowly, the most feared mafia boss in Chicago knelt in the aisle of a ruined church. For her, Carlo's face lit with triumph. Olivia could barely breathe now. Carlo said, "You understand love. It makes kings stupid." Matteo's eyes never left Olivia. "No," he said quietly. "It makes monsters patient." Carlo frowned. Behind him, Samuel rose from the floor and drove a broken piece of stained glass into Carlo's shoulder. Carlo screamed. Olivia dropped. Matteo fired once. Carlo fell backward across the altar steps. Sokolov tried to escape through the sacristy. But Matteo's men closed in. Isabella ran toward the side door. Olivia saw her pull a small pistol from her clutch and aim at Matteo's back. Olivia did not think. She grabbed Carlo's fallen gun. Her hands shook. Isabella's finger tightened. Olivia fired. The shot hit Isabella's arm, spinning her into the pews. The church went silent slowly. Not all at once. First the gunfire stopped, then the shouting, then only the storm remained. Snow falling through shattered glass onto blood, candles, and broken roses someone had placed at the altar long ago. Olivia dropped the gun. Matteo stood in the aisle swaying. Blood spread across his white shirt. "Matteo," she whispered. He looked at her. For the first time since she had known him, he looked afraid without hiding it. Then he collapsed. The hospital belonged to him, of course. A private luxury floor with locked elevators. Armed guards and windows overlooking the frozen city. Doctors moved quickly. Men whispered in corners. Samuel sat outside Olivia's room with his head in his hands, alive and shattered. But Olivia stayed beside Matteo's bed. He had lost too much blood. The bullet had torn deep. The doctors said words like critical and infection and wait. Olivia hated waiting. She held his hand through the first night, and the second. On the third, Carlo died in surgery under guard. Sokolov was taken alive, though the city would never officially know where. Isabella Romano confessed enough to collapse 3 families and free dozens of stolen identities, Samuel's among them. The evidence went public through a journalist. Olivia chose herself. Not Matteo, Olivia. Half of Chicago burned in headlines. Judges resigned. Police captains vanished. Politicians denied photographs that already existed. The DeLuca empire blood money. Allies and secrets. Matteo slept through the fall of his old world. On the 4th night, Olivia sat beside him in the dim hospital room, while rain whispered against the glass. "You once said beautiful things are usually dead," she told him softly. His fingers moved. She froze. Matteo's eyes opened dark. "Alive, you kept the roses," he rasped. Olivia laughed and cried at the same time. "You almost died, and that's your first question." His gaze moved over her face with aching slowness. "No," he whispered. "My first question was whether you were safe. But I already knew the answer." "How?" His thumb brushed weakly over her hand. "Because I was still breathing." She bowed her head over his hand. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he said, "Samuel. Alive, your mother. Protected, the evidence gone public." His eyes closed briefly. "Good." Olivia wiped her tears. "When you wake up properly." We need to talk. That sounds dangerous. It is. His mouth almost curved. Weeks passed. Winter loosened its grip on Chicago. The diner reopened after the shootout damage was repaired, though Rosie added new windows, new booths, and a security system that looked suspiciously military-grade. Olivia returned to work for one shift, not because she needed to, because she wanted to say goodbye. The regulars watched her differently now. Some with awe, some with fear, some with shame. She poured coffee for booth 7. She wiped the counter. She stood beneath the neon sign where her old life had cracked open. Then Matteo entered. No entourage this time. Just him, black coat, pale from recovery, still dangerous, still impossible to ignore. The diner went silent exactly as it had that first night. Olivia looked at him from behind the counter. "Coffee?" she asked. His eyes warmed in a way no one else would have recognized. Black. She poured. He sat at the counter. For a moment, they were back where it began. Except everything had changed. Olivia placed the mug in front of him. "No gifts today." "I brought one." She narrowed her eyes. "Matteo." He reached into his coat and set a small envelope on the counter. Inside was a deed. Rosie's Diner, paid in full, transferred to Olivia Bennett and Rosie Harper. Olivia stared at it. "I told you I'm not for sale, I remember." "Then what is this? Restitution?" "For what?" "For every time this place taught you to survive disrespect, because you needed money." Her throat tightened. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll make better coffee." She laughed. The sound softened something in the room. Later, outside beneath a pale morning sky, Olivia found him waiting by the curb. No black SUV blocking the street. No guards hovering close. They were there, of course, hidden somewhere. Matteo would never become careless. But he had learned distance. She stood beside him. "What happens now?" she asked. Matteo looked across the street at the city he no longer fully owned. The DeLuca family becomes legitimate where it can. And where it can't, his gaze shifted to her. It disappears. "For me, for Sophia, for your father, for Samuel." A pause. "And yes, for you." Olivia studied him. "You know, devotion is not the same as obsession. I am learning." Slowly, painfully. She smiled despite herself. He reached into his pocket. Her heart stopped. "Do not panic," he said. "That is never comforting from you." He took out the emerald ring. The same one from the fake engagement. Only now he did kneel. Right there on the wet sidewalk outside Rosie's Diner, with morning traffic passing. Steam rising from manholes. And the city watching without understanding what it meant for a man like Matteo DeLuca to lower himself willingly. Olivia's breath caught. "Matteo, I used this ring once to protect you without asking what you wanted," he said. That was control. His voice was rough, honest, stripped of every weapon. "Today, I am asking." She could not move. "I am not a safe man," he continued. "I will not insult you by pretending otherwise. I have done things that cannot be made clean by love. I have enemies. I have blood on my hands. I have instincts that still frighten me when it comes to you." Tears blurred her vision. "But I will never again mistake possession for protection. I will never put a cage around you and call it devotion. And if you choose a life far from me, I will spend the rest of mine making sure you get to live it." His hand trembled. Not slightly this time, openly. "But if you choose me," he whispered, "I will love you with everything in me that survived." Olivia looked at the man kneeling before her. The monster, the shield, the storm. The man who had been slapped in a diner and instead of demanding blood had sent roses. The man who had terrified her, infuriated her, protected her, lied to her, learned from her, blood for her, and finally knelt not to claim her, but to offer himself. She stepped closer. "Stand up." His face changed. Pain, quick and controlled, passed through his eyes. But he stood. Olivia took the ring from his hand. Then she placed it in his palm and closed his fingers around it. "I am not saying yes on a sidewalk, because you almost died and made a beautiful speech." A faint smile touched his mouth. "No, no." She wiped her tears. "You were going to court me properly." His eyes darkened with something warmer than possession. "How?" "Coffee. Honesty. No surveillance unless there is an actual threat. That last part is difficult." "Matteo," I said. "Difficult. Not impossible. And flowers," she added, his brow lifted. "I thought you didn't want gifts." "I want flowers because I like them. Not because you scared an entire city." He nodded solemnly. "What kind?" Olivia smiled, white roses. For once, Matteo DeLuca looked completely undone. 6 months later, spring came to Chicago. Rosie's diner became Olivia's diner, though Rosie still smoked by the back door and complained about the new espresso machine. Samuel worked there twice a week while studying criminal justice, determined to understand the system that had failed him and then tear pieces of it open from the inside. Evelyn moved into a quiet apartment above the diner, where she grew herbs by the window and cried the first time Samuel called her mom. Matteo came every morning at 7, always alone, always ordering black coffee, always leaving payment. Though Olivia owned the register and always gave it back, the city still whispered his name. Some whispered with fear, some with resentment, some with disbelief that the DeLuca empire had not fallen, but transformed into something colder, cleaner and harder to attack. Men still vanished when they crossed certain lines, but women from old trafficking ledgers reappeared with new identities. Children once lost in illegal adoptions found records restored. Families who had been silenced received envelopes with enough money to begin again. Matteo never took credit. Olivia knew that was enough. One rainy night, almost exactly a year after the slap, Olivia closed the diner late. The neon sign buzzed above the door. She turned and found Matteo standing in the same booth where he had first sat, holding a single white rose, not 500. "One, you reblocking my cleaning path," she said. "I apologize." "No, you done tea." "No," he admitted. "I done tea." She walked toward him. Rain streaked the windows behind his shoulders. The diner lights glowed soft and gold. Outside, Chicago moved in shadows and sirens, but inside, the world felt suspended. Matteo held out the rose. Olivia took it, their fingers brushed. Even after a year, that touch still had the power to silence her. "I have something else," he said. "If it's another building, I'm throwing coffee at you." "It is not a building." He reached into his coat and removed the emerald ring. Olivia's breath caught again. But this time, he did not kneel. He waited, letting the choice stand fully in her hands. "I have had coffee," he said. "I have told the truth even when it cost me. I have reduced surveillance to emergencies, though I remain emotionally opposed to this policy." She laughed through sudden tears. "And the flowers? One every Friday unless you were angry. Then 2. "That is true." He stepped closer, stopping just before the line of her body. "I am asking again, Olivia Bennett. Not because the city is watching. Not because danger is coming. Not because I need to make a statement." His voice lowered. "Because my life began again the night you refused to be afraid of me." Olivia looked at the ring, then at him. "Matteo, yes. If I say yes, you understand I still own myself." His gaze softened. "That is the woman I am asking. And if I slap you again," a slow, dangerous warmth moved through his eyes, "I will probably deserve it." She laughed. Then she held out her hand. Matteo slid the ring onto her finger with the same care he used the first time. But this time it did not feel like a strategy. It felt like a vow. He lifted her hand and pressed his mouth to her knuckles. Not possessive, reverent. Outside, thunder rolled over Chicago. Inside, Olivia stepped closer and rested her forehead against his chest. Matteo's arms came around her slowly, as if even now he remembered she was not something to take. She was something to be trusted with. The rain fell harder. The neon sign flickered. And in the small diner where a tired waitress had once slapped the most feared man in Chicago, a mafia boss who had ruled through fear finally learned what it meant to be chosen. Not obeyed, not feared, chosen. And for Matteo DeLuca, that was more dangerous than any war he had ever survived, because now he had something to lose. And Olivia Bennett, who had spent her whole life being underestimated, smiled against his heart. She was no longer the waitress everyone mocked. She was the woman who had brought a king to his knees. And somewhere beyond the rain, the city whispered their story like a warning. Never insult the woman with the white roses, because the devil of Chicago loved her. And this time, he loved her right.